right? So the web form which contains the default few HTML whenever you create a page, right? The body, form, different divs and a head, right? And the directives by default it will be created. Okay, so today let's start with a control and let's see how to write a code. So the event, as soon as you create a web form, right, you will a page load event will be created. We'll be checking out multiple events which we have for web forms, and we'll be checking out the life cycle of a page event. And when we say life cycle of a page, which means multiple events will be triggered as page progress, right? All those things we'll be checking out in our later classes. So here there are two different combo boxes here you can see in our code base, right? So whatever we define, right, different methods we define over here, right, everything if you want to set you can actually set with me. So as of now you can see that as there is only one method defined here, page load. Now you can see that page load is over here. Select it and it will be selected, right? And then so here what we have done is we have actually considered a button. So let's remove this search. Here you have a button here at which we consider. Let's make it small. Right. So now let's see how we can actually create an event for this. Right. So creating event is nothing but attaching some action to this submit button. Right. How can we attach an action to this buttons? Is something what we are going to see now. Creating events is much easier in our case because we have a code behind. Now, when you take a case of other languages like Java, right, you have to make a controller, right, make a servlet call, right, so that you can actually write the content on a servlet and then you can actually execute that. But yet, your main script will be attached with your form itself. So here there are two ways or multiple ways how you can actually create an event. Now you can see, so this is my view code base where I have only page load, right? Now right click and go to properties. Now in here, this properties window, right, you have many other steps to look into. So these are general properties, or I would say, physical properties which you have in here, right? And you can see there are multiple options over here. Now either you can actually watch out the properties based on different features, right, behavior, layout and all, right, or you can see all the properties at a time, right? And you have one more thing called events. See here you have many whatever events which are possible with this submit button, you will actually get it, right? So you can actually create the event, right, and you can see all the events. So you can see that okay, there can be a click event, there can be a loading event, unload event, and dispose event, data bind event, command event and all, right? So to do that, just double click on this button. Now you can see, but as soon as you double click on this button, your page, your button click event will be created, right? Now here you can see that this submit button is the name of the button. This is a nomenclature which auto-generated code will be followed. It will take the ID of this button, right? So let's go to properties. So it will take the ID of the button, right? And then what is the event we are looking for? We are looking for click. Now you can see automatically it will be filled up with submitted so click, and the same will be passed over here. Right? So this is your event for the control button, right? So now let's run this and see a simple code. Now this is my page load. Now you can see this is a simple class which we have, right? Again, so all the code back we will be writing in a class. All the code, all the logics, and all the method calls, everything will be done on a code back, which will be a class. Right? And now you can see that it says that it is a partial class. A long back we have seen what is a partial class. Right? So when you define any class as partial, right, which means you can define this. You can define another class with the same name, right, as a partial, which means all partial classes combinedly. Whenever you create an object of, let's say, the class name here is default, right? Whenever you create any object of default, right, all partial classes will be considered as a one set of class, which means you are actually splitting classes into multiple classes with the same name but keeping them partial. Now, what do we need to do this class partial? Because if you go to Solution Explorer here, let me open up that. Now here you can see you have two different files you have. One is your code back, and another one is your designer. Now you can see even designer class is the same class name underscore default, right? Now this is a partial class again. That is the reason why whenever you create any form, right, your multiple classes for code and for designers will be created, which are partial classes. And obviously whenever you run this form, an object of this default will be created because it has to trigger all the events and everything which get attached to form. Right? So when an object is created, then your main code pack will be considered including your designer, right? Because you are actually considering the object. So don't ever disturb your designer object. So this is something which is automatically created, right? So don't change any name or anything because these are directly connected to your form, right? So whatever you do here, right, will be automatically changed in your designer. So don't have to worry on that, right? So let's say I change my ID, right? I'm changing my ID to BT and submit and save. Now you can see immediately it will change it here, right, which is my designer, right? So that's how it happens. Now, as I've changed my ID, right, does it affect the submit button? No, it won't affect. Why? If you go back to default, then you can see something called on click. Now, every HTML or ASP.NET controls, right, will have different tags for different controls and the attributes. So these are called as the attributes of the tag. Basically the attributes of your button class. Now you can see here I am calling onClick as a method name. This is like event method name, which is submit button underscore click. Now it doesn't have to be same name. You can give any name to this and you can actually maintain the same name over here. Right. Now let's see how it actually gets executed. Then we'll go with the other controls after this. So here, let me write a simple code. Now you can have exception handling same because it's a simple C# class, right? And whatever you do, remember that your browser can understand only HTML, right? Whatever we are going to do here, right, will actually should support our form so that it will be converted to HTML, right? Now in page load, let's just show a simple let's do one thing. Now let me take one more control here, simple control, which is a label. Right. So here let me break it up. Now break will actually move to the new line, right? I'm just taking two controls in two different lines. That's it. If you go back to submit the design view here, you can see that you have your button and your label in two different lines that you actually breaking it down. Right? Now this is your label. Now if you go to properties, click on your code, now you can see you have your properties of label. Label 1, right, into text and all. Right? Now in order to show this, let's go to code behind and write a simple code. Now how can we assign a text to label? We have a label, what you can see. As soon as you type it, that all objects will be called over here. Now how I'm getting this label one label object here? Because in my designer, as soon as I create label, right, see here, as soon as I create the form label here, my designer will create a an protected variable for me, right? This variable will be a variable of default class, which is a partial class, and I also have one more partial default class here, which means this I can use these objects here, right? So that is how whatever you actually add in a form, it will be automatically added to the designer, which I can directly use it here. Right? So you can have properties again. Now everything is again, all the properties, everything of every control is binded to that control using properties or some internal methods, right? So let's say if you want to assign some data to this label, then you have a property called text. Let's say here you are doing something on the board, or just do something like this is page load. Right? Now which means you have done a page load, and let's see what happens when we run this page, because this is event. Whenever your page loads, this will be triggered. Right? And let's append something called datetime dot host. I'm just appending it so that you can see when it actually got loaded. Right? So let's run this. So I've selected Internet Explorer, so it will actually open after executing this, right? It will actually open up the output in browser now. So in our console applications, if you remember, right, whatever we used to code and run the application, right, it used to open in my console view. But here, the output will be seen in a web browser. Right now, you can see it is connecting to my local host on the port. Right? As soon as I run this application, so many things happen. It will build the web application, right? Then it will actually deploy the web application on IIS Express, right? Deploying in the sense it will actually create a new library now, and then it will open up a browser, and it will go to the URL, right? It will go to default.is page because I'm running over there, right? Or you can also create multiple, pages here. We'll see that part, and in multiple pages, if you want to set any page as active, you can also do that. I'll show you how to do the active page, right? And now you can see you have a page with so much of text and button and your page loaded. Now you can see this is page load. Now as soon as you click this, right, see the time changes, right? Which means you are getting the instance every time you hit on any control. Your page is loaded again and again, right? But there are different type of requests which you are doing here. Now, first time whenever you are fetching the page, right, which means you are trying to use get method. There are few HTTP methods which we have in the page lifecycle. You will actually see that, like get, like post, like trace, right, like delete. These are few HTTP methods which we have. Now here, whenever you first time try to access any page, for first instance, it will try to use get method, right? And whenever you have used something like submit or any control you are clicking, which sends request to server, right? then it is a post method, right? Which means whenever I'm clicking on submit, which means I'm sending a request to server and I'll be getting some response. So that is called as a, whenever you see at a page perspective, that is called as a post back. I posted something and I'm getting some data back, which is a post back, right? Which means whenever I click on the submit, you can see there is a change in time, which means I don't want to change other components based on my submit button, which is something called as your post back, right? So let's see how we can actually, you know, make sure the data, my page load is different from a control I'm clicking. Whenever I click on my control, which means I'm posting something and getting response. That should not affect my label text. In that case, in a page load, just check whether if it is a not is post back. Now there is a method property called is post back for a page, right? You can see even every class, if it is a code, right, it will be inherited with a page class. See here, this is our web forms page, which is an internal, internal .NET provided class, and we're inheriting. So this class contains few properties. One of them is your is post back, right? So is post back will give you whether page loaded for the first time or, right, you are actually you posted some post request to server and you are getting response. Whenever it is a post request, then we don't have to do some changes. Otherwise, we have to do some changes. That's what it is. Let's run this. Right, submit. Now you can see it's 5:54 and 44. Right now, as soon as you are clicking something, now only this submit button, whatever you're doing, is happening. Which means I'm posting data, right, and I'm not doing anything else. Right? Now, let's see what happens when I do click event. Now, go back to web form and let me drag and drop one more label here. So let me drag and drop label beside the submit. Right? Now let me keep it here, which is a separate view. Go to source if you don't feel it's a separate one. You can see a separate tags created now. As soon as you drag and drop it, so much of code will be created for you. Now here I have label 2. Now let's say this is for my page load and this is for whenever I click my button, I want to change label text. That's what I want to do. So let's go to the button click. Now whenever I click some button, I want to post, which means I want to do some action. What action I want to do? Let's say I want to change the label text. Now let's take label 2 dot text is equal to button clicked, right? And let's take get time dot now dot post. Now this time what I'm doing, so submit, this is the method which will be called whenever your button click triggers, right? And we are going to do some post, what to post and what exactly to run, we will be writing up here. Now as of now what I'm doing, I'm actually writing some code to assign text to label. Right? So let's run this. Now this time, whenever I run it, right, my browser will be rendered for first time. Right? Rendering your browser is nothing but you are actually calling for a page, right? And you are getting the response, and that response is accommodated in your browser, which is called as a rendering of your page, rendering of your HTML. Now you can see there is a page load label, and you can see label directly here. Now while running your code, right, you won't be able to edit your class files. It won't allow. See, whenever I click, it says it is code is already running. If you want to stop and run, but you can always change your web form HTML ASPX page. Let's say here I am doing some break here. You can see it allows me to edit my HTML content. Now let's go back and do refresh this, now you can see your load will go to separate line. Right? So this is your page load event and this is your label event. Now first time we haven't clicked any button, so that's why it's there. Click on this. Now you can see your page load time will not change, right? But your button click time will be changed. See here, right? Now why my page load time is not getting changed? Because I am checking that if it is a post back, I don't want to change, right? So whenever I'm changing some control or doing something, it's a post back. That's why it won't change. But I refresh this page, see what happens. When I refresh this page, right? Now you can see it will change. Refreshing this page is nothing but I'm actually calling some getting a page. So always refresh this, right? You can see the time changes because every time I refresh, which means it is not a post, it is completely trying to get your page, right? So that is a refresh, and you are getting your data. Click on this again, the time will start now, and it will change. Right? So this is how your post back happens, right? Whenever you try to post some data and whenever you are doing some action on button click, that we are actually showing that. Right? Now let's say if any so here let's take one more control here. Let's go back to this and let me let's take a text box control. Now this is a text box control which will give you access to enter some text, right? And whatever text I am entering here, let's say I want to assign it to label 2. Let's do that. So when you run this, you will see, or go to design, you will see a text box here, right? And go back to this. Let me put this text box next to the button, not to the label. So when I go to design, you have a text box and submit. Right? You have a text box and a submit button. Now this is text box which we have, and now this allows us to enter some data. Fine. Now here what I want to do is whenever I submit, right? So this is third control we are checking for. Now let's say whenever I submit, click on submit, I want to get this text and do some action. So that action is nothing but I want to get the text and assign it to label, let's say. Right? Now here what I'm going to do, I'll take a simple variable string, let's say text value is equal to, now my text box, if you click on this text box, right, and go to properties, you have many properties of text box again. You have maximum length. There are so many things for text box because text box is something which you are providing to the end client to enter data, right? Which means you have to be careful in that because any value can be entered in this text box, which means you are actually giving an option to user to enter data, right? Now here you have to choose what type of text box is whether it's a password text box or right the type, right, and what is the maximum length you can enter, right, and all. Now you have everything in here. If you can see is you have text mode as single line, right? See here you have many text modes directly queue. You have single line, multi-line, password. If you select it as a password, now it will actually mask it to the user whenever he enters any data. So it will be dots will be visible, not the actual text. And date time, which will allow you only to enter date time. And email, if you select email, it will allow you only to enter email alone. Right? That is your text mode you have. Right? By default, it is a single line mode. Right? Now here you can see one more property called tooltip. Now here tooltip is something which you want to show whenever you mouse over it, whenever you mouse over on anything, right? If the box, whatever you see on top of the control is called as tooltip. Now, when I mouse over on this release CA, I'm actually checking solution configuration. Go back here, it says save all. Right? Go back here, it says Internet Explorer. Go to anything, go to here, right? Even here, you'll actually get some mouse overs. See, it says navigate back. These are mouse overs, or we can also call it as a tooltip. Tooltip, right? When I go to submit, now here for this submit, it will have its own tooltip. See, let's say I'm writing something called click to submit. Now, this tooltip option will have for all controls to submit request. Right? And same way, let's go to text box. Let's say enter some value to show all together. Right? I just gave some tooltips here. Right? So for an important controls, it's always better to give some tooltips, right? So that user can understand what action will be done whenever you click on that, or right? All this. For label, you don't need obviously, because label will definitely show. It is like a plain text you are actually showing, right? Now let's go back here, and I have a text box one, which is my text box, which I just dragged and drop, right? And how to get text? It is a dot text which we can get. Now this is something where I'm actually saving. Whenever I click on this button, whatever data I enter in text box, I'm retrieving that text into my variable. And what I'll do, I'll just append this variable to the data. Okay. You have a button click text also, but including that, I am including my text values. Now let's run this. Right now, initially when I click on submit, right, you can see as my text is blank, nothing will be shown here, right? And you can see it will continue to show me the button post here. Now let's say I'm just entering some value. Let's say I just enter Apple and click on submit, right? As soon as you do, now you can see your text value will be retrieved. Now whatever you enter, this is how you actually get the data and do some action on it. Right? As soon as I click this, right, I have some text on it, and I'm doing it, and I'm actually taking it up. Now you can see every time I do, my text is retained here, and I'm actually taking it up. Now let me take HTML text box here. Now this is my ASP.NET text box, right? ASP text. Now let me take some HTML text box so that we'll see what exactly is different. So let's go to toolbox here. Why do we need server explorer? Let me close this. Now here let's go to HTML and text. Let's give it here, and perfect. You have an input ID text one. Let's call it as txt itself, right? Now it will be visible in this way. And what I'm going to do here is, whenever I click on submit, I want this text box data and also this text data to be appended here. Let's go back and do that. Now let me take one more string value as text value to text box. So text. You have text. What is the ID interface? It's text one. Now this is a HTML control, right? HTML control. You can see whenever I drag and drop HTML control, you won't be able to take it here. Now you can see you have only text box one, right? It takes only the controls which are considered from your which are ASP.NET controls. For those, the object will be created, right? So you can see you have text box one, submit, label, and label two, and you don't have your default this input text. obviously for this we have to write some JavaScript to get the data now. So let's not confuse with that. We'll see that part later. So the theme here is why I took this submit one more input text box, right? And doing this action is, let me run this and let me show you. So here my page is loading for the first time, which is like a get method. Now you have your .NET text box, right? Here you can see. Now you can see as soon as I mouse over, you can see click to submit request. This is something which I have written, right? And go back here, mouse over, you can see enter some value to show in label. Now this is something which is a tooltip you have written, right? As soon as you mouse over on the control, you can see the tooltip, right? Let's say here I'm actually entering some data, and let's say I gave some number here. Click on submit. Can you see this? When I click on submit, right, this went off. Right? I just entered some other value. Click on submit. Now you can see this is not retaining the value, but here in my .NET control it is retaining the value. Now why does it happen? Now this happens with all controls, all HTML controls, and this happens with all .NET controls to retain, right? To retain data, and this will not be retained. Why? Now see here, everything whatever you have in .NET is different classes, right? As soon as your page is loaded, right, your get new page is loaded, right, a new object of your form will be created, right? A new object of your form will be created automatically, which means everything will be reset. And we know that your HTML text is a client-side HTML tag, right, which doesn't know what value to show on page on post tag, right? So that is the difference between you have your text here and your legacy, your ASP.NET control text box here. Now that state of saving data for multiple requests between one page request to other page request is called as a view state. So by default, .NET controls will have view state enabled, right? Select on this, right click and go to properties. So let's go to view state properties. You can see here something called, you can see view state mode is inherited, right? Inherited in the sense as, so when I say inherited, now all the controls, like you can see my class default is being inherited from page type. Now in this page for all controls, by default the view state is enabled, which means whatever control I'm going to use, the view state will be enabled. But by proactively, if you want to enable, you can always go back and enable it. Let me just disable it for some time, save it up and refresh this again. Click on, let me take some data here, right? See here, as your page is enabled for, let me just run this. By default, as it is enabled, right, your data will stay as is. Let me click on this, take this value, click on apply, right? It will stay forever. Because the inheritance property will always work. It will actually keep your value enabled. Now enter any value here, it won't stay. Fine. So these are the main difference which we have, right, as with respect to the .NET control and the other stuff. Now let's see how we can actually maintain custom view state, right? Because every control will have its own view state, right? Internal property of view state. But let's say you want to actually maintain separate, view state for it. Let me run this page once again, and let me show you something else here. So let me just take this value and click. Now this is a page which you can see right now. If you right click on this page and go to view source, right? So this is a view source which you always see in your for every page you have. Now you can see whatever it is showing up here, right? Whatever you have written, it is showing, and you can see a label 2, right? If you have taken label 2, and you can see whatever data is currently loaded, that data will be shown. Now your view source is nothing but it will show the current HTML which got rendered on your page, right? Now we never know whether this is written on .NET or C# or anything. Doesn't matter, right? Because your final rendering part will be HTML. That's the reason why you can see that the part which you have rendered here is HTML. Now in this HTML here you can see few things like a hidden field. Now what is a hidden field? Now hidden field is nothing but a view state will be saved in a hidden field. Now this will not be shown to user, but your hidden field will persist data. Why? Because for every page request, we know that your object will be recreated. When your object is recreated, then we never know what exactly data was there in that text box, right? Or anywhere. We never know what text was there. Now, in that is a situation where your uh, hidden view state will be created. You can see here that underscore view state will be created, and all the values of different controls will be saved as a encrypted 64-bit values, right? So that is your hidden field which you have, right? Now you can also create your own. Let's go back to this. Let's take a simple example of getting using any variable here. Let's say I'm going to use let's say I'm going to use public int. Let's say I want page clicks. So initially I'm setting it to 0, right? What I want to do is I want to check on multiple browsers, whoever clicks on the page, right? I want to get how many clicks happen, right? So normally what I can show here, let's say I am going to show that on label text here itself, right? Which is, let me take this page clicks and append this here and give some space, right? And before doing that, let me just do page clicks plus is equal to 1, because every time I click I want to actually extend it more. Let me run this. So here I have yeah. So let me give some data here, submit. I can see 1 and I data whatever I have. Now when I click on this again, right, you can see that my page clicks event is not getting, sorry, my page click variable is not getting incremented. Why? Why? Because we know that this class object is recreated every time we request for a new object, right? So every time we request for something, right, your class object will be recreated. New instance of your class will be created. Whenever your new instance of your class is created, your variable page clicks will always be instantiated with 0. And whenever it is 0, and whenever you click on button, your 0 will always be incremented with 1. That's what is happening, right? So in this case, obviously we will have view state for controls. I know that when I click on submit, yes, I know that this control value will be retained because this control view state is already enabled. Now, how can I enable my view state for variables or data which I want to persist? Right, is something which we have to consider here. Right. Now here we have something called. Let me stop this. we have a view state property here, which you can consider. Now this view state is like your hash table, which will save your key and value sets into its memory. And this view state runs across multiple requests, multiple objects of your same instance of the page. And this view state is retained, and this view state will be live only till your page is live. Now whenever you move from one page to other page, your view state will be collapsed. The complete view state will be destroyed. Now the view state is completely a page scope 1. Right? So let's say I'm gonna take view state. I have to give some value here, let's say, right? Now what is the value? Now this is like a key. Let's say I'm just taking it as some something like current click value, right? Which will give me what is the value which I click now, right? So here you can actually say. Now what I'm going to do here is, so as soon as I increment my page click, right? Let's say I'm gonna save it to page clicks here. Now I am saving it here. Now before that, what happened to page clicks? It always stays 0. But I have to actually get it from somewhere, right? Now every time I'm incrementing, I'm saving it in a view state. Now from where I can get it from view state itself. So now let's get it from view state. Now how we can get it? Now page clicks is equal to what is the initial value? Now two things I'm doing. I'm actually setting your view state data, and I'm trying to get your view state data. And you will get some error because view state always gives you an object, right? But this is an integer which you want, right? So you can always convert it to int, right? Now we are converting it to int here. Now one more issue here is, as soon as you run your program and click on button, now initially your view state doesn't have any value here, right? Now which means we have to do two things. Either check nullable for this, because if you try to convert null into integer, you will get error. Now let's run this and see what happens. So let me give some value here. Click. See here, it doesn't actually do anything because we are handling an exception here, right? Let me just remove this exception part, comment it out basically, because this is suppressing the exception. I clicked on this. Now you can see an exception happened. It says object reference not set and is, and now whenever I'm running from code, it is giving. Now you can see this is a yellow screen which will get, right? When you start actually starting your real-time situation, this is a yellow page we normally say, like a complete error page, and no one likes to get an error page in your website. This is not acceptable, right? So this is the reason why you should always validate whatever things you have to. Now you can say object reference not set, which means an instance for view set you haven't actually instantiated this, and you are trying to get the data and you are converting it, which is not allowed, right? For that, what we'll do is we can actually check the value. If the value is there, then this. If this is not equal to null, then only get a page clicks. Otherwise, let the page clicks be saved. Right? That's what we're doing. Let's run this program. And you can see one here. Now go on. Now you can see the value changes. Now it is not only with the one browser. Let me take some other browser. Let me just take some other browser here, and let me give the URL, right? Localhost now. I'm just giving this URL. Right now you can see here that whenever I click on this button, right, load it again, fresh. Now you can see the page will be defaulted here, right? By default, the label will be. Let me just do something. Click on submit. You can see your object will start again, and your view state, a fresh view state, will be created for your page. Right? Click, go on, and click on again. Right? For multiple responses, right? For multiple clicks, you get a new host back, and your view state will be retained as is. Now here, come back here. We have refreshed and done any, all other steps through this browser, right? Let's get back and click submit. Now you can see the view state for this page is retained. Now let's refresh this again and click on submit. Now you can see again this one. That is the reason why the view state is always only a page scope. Remember that view state always stay as a page scope. You can't have two different pages. Same view state, you can't have it for two different pages. You can have it only for one page. Right? So that is a view state you should do. Now, so let's get back and see. Now we just discussed that my text box, which is an ASP control, have got default view state, right? That's what we just understood. Which means in order to save value, right? I'm actually showing it on label, right? Now, which means even my label is a .NET control which I'm using. Now, what does it mean? It means that my label, whatever I'm using, will have a value, right? Let's say I have many values in here anyways. Let me just comment others. Let's say I'm actually showing only page clicks, which means this control will have the latest data as such, right? So can't I use this? So let's convert to .boost. Then I can use this label text to do that, right? Now you may get that out. Yes, you can do that. Now let's say I don't have any of my view state. Let me just uncomment this exception handling part. So here what I'll do is before, so let's say I'm not going to use view state. Now one more thing, whenever you're using view state, even this view state will be a hidden field, right? View state will always be a hidden field, and it will actually move across the page requests you're doing, right? Go back to your page and I'll show you that. Let me click on submit. You can see it is increasing. Now go to your view source. Now you can see you have view state where all your data, encrypted data, will be created. And this is your ASP hidden data. Fine. Now let's go back and let's not use this view state. Rather, what I want to do, I want to use a label text directly, let's say. Right? So what I'll do, before page clicks, I increment, let's say I'm going to get it from label to .text. Right? So let me call it as int. Right? And by default, right, this label text, whatever I have. Okay, this is a string, right? This is not an object. So what I can do in.parts of my text. So this is a label 2. So by default, let's go to label 2 and keep the value as 0. Right? So initially the value will be 0 for this text, and I'm saving it up. Right? Let's run this. So initially it's 0. Click on submit. You can see 1. Submit again. Submit again. Submit again. What I'm doing is I'm taking an advantage of the variable view state, which means the not variable control, .NET control, which I have. We actually learned that .NET controls, which is, whenever I say .NET controls, it always suffix with ASP. If you have ASP colon and the label and the control right, now for them the view state will be, by default it will be enabled. But the data will be, whatever data is in current state, right, and whatever data you get in the next state will be saved in between in a hidden field, which is called as a view state, right? So that I'm actually taking advantage of that, and what I'm doing, I'm getting rid of my actual calling of view state property, right? Rather, what I'm doing, I'm actually using the label text itself, where my view state will be enabled, and every time I click, I have my latest data, and I'm using that. Now again, this stays specific to your page life cycle. Let's go back and refresh your another browser. It will be 0, right? 0 here, and start submitting. Now we'll get specific to this page. You will get different outputs. Fine. Now here you are reading something which is exclusive to your now. Let me show you something else. Now let's do one thing. Let me create a separate class here. You can create a class or any item you want, right? Let me create a class. Let me call it as globals. And here, let me call one public static int, let's say clicks as 0. So here what I'm doing is I'm actually using clicks over here, right? Page clicks, that's it. Now in my default CS, let's say I don't have defined this variable, right? I don't have this value as such. Now what I'm going to do here, let's say I'm going to take page clicks from there, which is my CL globals. Comment this. What I'm going to do here is your globals is a class dot you have clicks, right? Now I'm going to take this. Now clicks is something which is an integer, right? And I can increment that. And let me just take this globals here. Now let's run this and see what happens in this situation. Now I'm going to get number of page requests I got. So you can see it increments now. Now I'm not using any label text or anything, but you can see I'm using one global. Why? Because any objects, any number of objects I create for this class, right? Doesn't matter. My globals class where I'm maintaining the static will always retain until I dispose this, right? Even if you go to the next browser, click on this, you can see here. See what happens here, right? If you can notice this, right, it is maintaining a single instance of statics. Let's say I'm making it as sub 20. Now let's go back to your next page and do click. You can see 21 here, which means across browsers or across pages, right, your counter will be maintained. Let's say here again I clicked on some 35. Some more requests, that's 7, let's say, right? Then come back and click here, you'll get 38 requests. It will be in sync. Open up any number of browsers and do that. Why I've taken two different instances, you will actually see page life in this browser will be different from the page life here. But you can see the counter same. Right? So this is how you can actually maintain the global counter if you want, where you don't need a view state amount. Right? Where you're actually maintaining one variable for two data, right? Do some request in 45 here and click on this, you get 46. So this is something which is a view state which you can actually have, and you can now, this is a concept of view state and you can use this for anything you want. Either you can create your own view state or whatever view state you have for controls, you can use them, right? And you can use them to do some operation. So this is about your button control, text box control, and the labels which we have, and how we can actually use their view state or create custom view state or create or persist the state based on some global, right? which doesn't depend upon your object creations. Every time you refresh or do post back or something, your class object will be created, because until unless your class object is created, your events and everything will not be tagged. It has to be instantiated, right? So this is how it works in. So this is what we have for today.